7 months. In 7 months on the job, Mykhailo Fedorov shut Russia's drones out of Starlink, forced billions in defense contracts into open tender for the first time in Ukraine's history, and stood in front of 1,000 of his own officials to promise the corrupt ones a prison cell. On the 16th of July, 2026, President Zelenskyy fired him. The loudest cheers came from Russia's war bloggers, celebrating on Telegram. This is the Fedorov firing. Fedorov and his commander-in-chief, Oleksandr Syrskyi, had stopped being able to share a war. They fought over how to beat Russia, over who got to sign off on weapons, over whether a 35-year-old technocrat could be allowed to break the machine that had fed Ukraine's generals for years. On the 16th of July, 2026, Zelenskyy chose the general. Protesters poured into nearly 20 cities within hours, and Ukraine's Western allies started asking out loud what their partner had just done. Zelenskyy put it simply to his own lawmakers. The two men lived in different worlds. Fedorov's world ran on drones, data, and speed. Syrskyi's ran on manpower, mass, and the old Soviet doctrine he'd trained in. Both men wanted to win. Neither could stand working with the other. Fedorov was 35, and he'd already changed the country once. He ran the digital campaign that put a television comedian in the presidency in 2019, then built Dia, a whole government folded into a phone app that nearly every Ukrainian now carries. Fedorov turned that same energy on the war machine. His team put 5,000 pickup trucks out to open bidding and saved the ministry over $1 billion hryvnia on that deal alone. The results reached the front line fast. Drone interception climbed from 83% to 91%. Cruise missile interception nearly doubled, from 47% to 87%. Fedorov built the Brave One tech cluster, launched the army of drones, kept Elon Musk on the phone to hold Starlink open over Ukrainian trenches, and rewrote army contracts so a recruit could finally see the day his service would end. The Financial Times would soon call him the most successful Ukrainian minister in 4.5 years. For years, buying weapons in Ukraine ran on habit with little oversight. The generals drew up the shopping list, the ministry signed it, and nobody asked many questions, at least none they really wanted to know the answer to. Fedorov started asking. Fedorov stopped rubber stamping the general staff's requests and funded what frontline brigades were actually begging for, the trucks and the drones, and he cut the suppliers who'd been selling to the ministry at prices no one had ever competed against. Some of those suppliers lost fortunes overnight. Fedorov's people tore up specifications written word by word to fit one favored company, the kind of spec only a single supplier could ever satisfy, at whatever price it liked. From the 10th of March, 2026, the ministry let software place the orders, generated straight from what brigades needed, so a purchase answered to a soldier instead of a middleman. A single competitive tender for artillery shells that May cut costs by more than 16%. Every reform like it pulled money out of a pocket that had grown very used to being full. The corruption was inside Fedorov's own building. In January 2026, law enforcement handed him intelligence on networks working the ministry from within, insiders quietly selling confidential procurement data to the companies bidding for contracts. Fedorov put officials on polygraphs and fired the ones who failed or refused. Then he gathered about 1,000 ministry employees into one room, switched on a camera, and drew a line every one of them could see. If even one person or one company among you thinks about running procurement schemes in the Ministry of Defense, I will personally do everything possible to make sure you end up in prison, Fedorov. Fedorov posted that video for the whole country to watch. 3 weeks later, he was the one out of a job. While Fedorov was cleaning house, his rival was sinking into a scandal of his own. On the 23rd of June, the investigative outlet Babel reported that at least 25 recruits in one of Syrskyi's assault regiments, a unit nicknamed Skelya, the Cliff, had died away from combat in roughly 6 months, their deaths written up as illness on paperwork the reporters simply didn't believe. Beatings covered up. Men thrown into frontal assaults as, in the report's own word, cannon fodder. Skelya was no ordinary unit. Syrskyi had built it, and 3 like it, to answer directly to him, which turned a regiment's disgrace into a stain at the very top of the army. Ukraine's State Bureau of Investigation opened a case on the 24th of June, and the regiment's commander was suspended within a day. Syrskyi called the abuse shameful and denied any part in it. Zelenskyy now had to choose between a reformer his own people adored and a general under investigation over the deaths of the recruits he was meant to lead. Zelenskyy laid out his reasoning to his own party, and he didn't dress it up. They live in two different worlds. Misha wants to digitize everything, to build a system around technology. The military just wants to be heard. I can't allow the Defense Ministry and the General Staff to be at war with each other in a country that's at war. Ideally, I'd replace them both. But I can't do that at the same time, Zelenskyy said. Zelenskyy kept the man the army wanted and let the reformer go. Fedorov, on his way out, described what the fight had really looked like behind the closed doors. He'd asked Zelenskyy to fire both Syrskyi and the chief of the General Staff. The president said no, and Fedorov says he swallowed it and tried to work with the man. Cooperation collapsed almost at once. Every reform he pushed, Fedorov said, came back blocked. The General Staff wouldn't sign the papers to restructure his ministry. A basic plan to get drones to the brigades sat unapproved for 4 months. He is willing to attend meetings personally, weave intrigues, yet he fails to see the problem with the actions being taken, Fedorov said of Syrskyi. The breaking point, Fedorov said, was an ultimatum. Syrskyi told the president to choose. Instead of figuring out how to overpower Russia, which is the commander's task, he figured out how to split the country, Fedorov said. The country answered in the streets. On the 16th of July, crowds filled central Kyiv and gathered in Lviv, Odessa, Kharkiv, Mykolaiv, Dnipro, Rivne, Poltava, Zhytomyr, Lutsk, and Ternopil, close to 20 cities, chanting the words of their own constitution back at the president. The people are the ultimate source of power. Their signs read, "The Russians are celebrating." Dmytro Kozyatinsky, a former combat medic who'd left the army a year before, called people out to protest. Military officials went hunting for his old unit, apparently thinking he was still a soldier they could punish. The crowds kept insisting they weren't there for one man. Ukrainians are not on the streets because they feel sorry for Fedorov, one wrote. They are protesting because they want the reforms he started to be finished. Another put it plainer. People aren't marching to save Fedorov. They're marching because they fear losing the hope that Ukraine can do better. Ukraine's allies watched, and mostly, they just winced. NATO's Mark Rutte kept it diplomatic. A good working relationship, best wishes, nothing sharper. The EU's Defense Commissioner, Andrius Kubilius, heard the news while he was standing in Kyiv and couldn't hide his surprise. This will pose a question. Why such a person is being replaced, Kubilius said. Germany's Boris Pistorius sent Fedorov a personal thank you, crediting his courage and innovation for giving Ukraine new momentum in the war. Western capitals kept quiet. To Brussels, hiring and firing a minister is Ukraine's own business, even when it visibly rattles the war effort. Russia's war bloggers treated the firing as a victory won without firing a shot. Sviatoslav Golikov called it very positive news, praised Fedorov, of all people, as an energetic and creative technocrat, and called his 6 months of work substantial and tangible. He was too smart and effective an enemy. Things should become a little easier now, the blogger Alexei Zhivov wrote. Other channels smelled opportunity. One predicted Fedorov's whole team would be purged next. Another, cruder, wrote that the firing was a gift for us, a chance to drive a wedge into the crack that has formed. The resignations began the same afternoon. Pavlo Yelizarov, deputy commander of the Air Force and founder of the Lasars Group drone unit, quit, writing that removing Fedorov was a great evil for the country's defense capability, and that gutting his air defense reforms will cause numerous casualties and destruction in Ukraine. Deputy Minister Katerina Chernohorenko walked. So did Serhiy Beskresnov, the radio warfare advisor the whole army knew by his call sign, Flash. Russian channels watched the exodus and called it the start of the purge they'd been hoping for. Fedorov was born in January 1991 in the Zaporizhia region in the Soviet Union's final months, and he rose through the 2019 election that threw out Ukraine's old political class. Syrskyi was born in Russia in 1965, trained at the Moscow Higher Military Command School, and carries the Soviet doctrine of mass in his bones. The whole country has been pulling away from that Soviet past for a decade. Support for openly pro-Russian parties has collapsed from around half the national vote to about 20%, most of it now among the elderly. Of the 6,000 Lenin statues Ukraine once inherited, the only ones still standing are on land Russia occupies. Fedorov's home region has been trying to rule itself from below for 400 years. Out past the Dnipro Rapids, from the 16th century, Cossacks ran a warrior republic called the Zaporizhian Sich. They elected their commander in open assembly, and when they'd had enough of him, they stripped his command the same way. 3 centuries later, on that same step, Nestor Makhno raised black anarchist banners over a stateless republic the size of a small country, 75,000 square kilometers run by village assemblies, where the land, they said, belongs to no one. His peasant army fought the whites, the Germans, and finally the Bolsheviks, who crushed it and drove him into exile. When Russia invaded in 2022, that old spirit walked straight back onto the field. On the first day of the full-scale war, anarchist and anti-fascist volunteers formed a unit in Kiev called Black Headquarters, naming Makhno and the Spanish anarchists as their ancestors. Their spokesman, who fought as Ilya until he was killed in 2023, said the label barely mattered. The more important thing is that a lot of people organized spontaneously. Volunteer drone workshops carried that same do-it-yourself instinct, and Fedorov scaled them into the army of drones and Brave One, a war fought from the bottom up by a minister who trusted the people at the edge more than the brass at the center. Heather Marsh, the philosopher who helped build the Occupy and 15M movements, has a name for it. She calls it stigmergy. Coordinated action guided by signals instead of leaders. Movements that are, in her words, action-based instead of personality-based. Verbs, not nouns. Mobilization was the one failure his enemies could pin on him, and the one he flatly refused to accept. Recruitment offices answered to the generals, not to Fedorov, and no fix for the draft, he argued, would ever hold until the army itself was reformed. The numbers behind the crisis are staggering. Between January 2022 and September 2025, Ukraine logged 235,646 cases of soldiers going absent without leave, and another 53,954 for desertion. Fedorov's answer was to make army life something a person might actually sign up for. Contracts of 6, 10, 14, and 24 months with a real end date, so a recruit could see the door before he walked through it. Supporters say it was already working. Fedorov said, "The root problem is our product. What are we selling? Lies, chaos, irresponsibility? Ukrainians do not need someone with a club forcing them forward. They take responsibility and risks themselves. A true democracy." The defense seat that caused the whole crisis ended the day empty. Yevhen Kamara stepped in to run the ministry as a caretaker while the search went on. Parliament confirmed a new prime minister, Serhiy Koretsky, that same 16th of July, with 264 of 392 votes. Ihor Klimenko, the interior minister everyone expected to get the job, never even reached a vote. "There are no votes as of now," MP Yaroslav Zhelezniak said. Zelenskyy admitted he had no final choice yet, and would bring names to parliament later. Fedorov's team had dismantled a scheme feeding the Defense Ministry's secret procurement data to the very companies bidding for its contracts. Whether the cases he opened outlive him is the question his allies keep asking. And the answer depends on who inherits the building he was cleaning out. Analyst Gustav Gressel didn't hedge. If Russian telegram channels are celebrating, then the first suspicion arises that something is going wrong, Gressel said. "I think Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has shot himself in the foot in a major way." Zelenskyy has folded before. A year earlier, when his government moved against Ukraine's anti-corruption agencies, street protest and foreign pressure hit him at the same moment, and he backed down. The people and the West pushing together is the one force that has historically turned a Ukrainian leader around. This time, only the people are pushing. Volodymyr Ishchenko, a sociologist, sees the deeper trap. He describes a country of atomized masses, easy to pour into the streets and hard to forge into lasting power, where 3 changes of government since 1990 each swapped one set of oligarchs for another and left the machinery underneath untouched. That's the story behind Fedorov's firing. Subscribe, stay sharp, and I'll catch you on the next one.